The possibilities are endless. The league resets once again on Thursday with new blood and new opportunities to rebuild franchises with the best prospects available. The 2019 draft is almost here. We're here to preview with our 2019 mock draft presented by State Farm. Welcome into our Atlanta studio. Good to have you with us as always. I'm Matt Weiner. Tom Penn will be along with big picture assessments of some of the teams picking on Thursday in just a bit, while our mock picks will be made by veteran executive Billy King and, of course, Andy Katz, who's been covering the draft in college basketball for years. Billy, as a class, how does this 2019 group stack up?
Well, it starts with Zion. I think that's what everybody's talking about. But I think in every draft, people say it's a deep draft, it's not a deep draft. I think in each draft, it's in the behind the holder. I think people will find players in this draft. You just got to do your homework and do your research. But I think there are good players further down in the draft. But it is Zion at the top.
So arguably, this is the most consensus number one pick since LeBron James. But in covering this draft, there are other candidates out there that we can go back. And I remember all these drafts where it was unanimous for the most part that these four players were also going to be number one. Go back to Derrick Rose when the Bulls were going to pick him, and they did. Blake Griffin for the Clippers. John Wall with the Wizards. And then Anthony Davis, we'll talk about him this evening, of course, coming off that national championship with Kentucky in 2012. He then is the consensus number one. So since 2012, this is the most consensus number one in Zion Williamson.
And injuries aside, all those guys have been really, really good NBA players. We'll hear Zion's name in a moment. We'll mock our way through the first round in a bit. As a reminder, these picks are non-binding. Andy and Billy will not be held accountable for their selections, and the players will not receive so much as a hat as a result of this exercise. Also, not picking in the first round, mock or otherwise, the Mavericks, Nuggets, Kings, Rockets, Clippers, or world champion Raptors. The Lakers have agreed to trade away their fourth pick to the Pelicans, as you've probably heard, and that's where we'll begin with Tom Penn. Tom, this time last year, David Griffin was here in studio for this show. Now, Tom, thanks to lottery luck and the Anthony Davis deal with the Lakers, he's in the middle of a total transformation in New Orleans. Yeah. Take us into the big changes in the Big Easy.
We miss you, Griff. Where are you? Where are you? Listen, the trade that happened is critically important and has to wait because of the money situation. They have to wait till the money matches next calendar year or next fiscal year. Every move now must complement Zion Williamson. They're going to take him at one. We all know it. But he has clarity now on exactly what to do. And the Anthony Davis deal did that. It brought in a bunch of young assets, and it brought in depth on the perimeter. They've got guys that are on the rise, that are ready to, they've been through their growing pains. Ingram's been through it. We'll see if he can pop. Lonzo Ball's been through it. We see if he can pop. They get Lonzo's dad, too. That's a nice bonus. But then the next thing they have is $22 million in cap space. And what do they do with that? And look for Griff to do nothing but complimentary moves with Zion Williamson. And, Billy, let's make it official. I'll throw it back to you. Who do they take at one in New Orleans?
Well, I think it's a tough decision, but I think they're going to take Zion Williamson. I mean, he's a guy that's been a phenom in college basketball. He's got the size, the athletic ability, handle the basketball. The only thing he really lacks is a guy that can really shoot the jump shot, but I love everything about him, especially with this NBA because it's positionless NBA. He can play 3, 4, and put the ball in his hands. I think he could be pretty special.
You know, what's crazy is I talk about this being a consensus number one. He was not the consensus number one prior to the season. Right. He had a monster game to open the season against Kentucky in the Champions Classic, and from that point on, but prior to that, it was his teammate, R.J. Barrett, last summer that everyone was talking about as the number one pick.
No, he was good.
He will be the first player born this century drafted into the NBA, which is appropriate because it is a possibility that he comes to us from the future sometime, right? We have not seen human beings who can do what he does at his size.
No, and what he brings to the New Orleans organization with his social ability, he has 3.4 million followers on Instagram. He's got Twitter follows, so there'll be a lot of excitement. But basketball-wise, for his size, 6'7", 285, to be able to jump and finish like that, the one thing I think he does need to do is trim some of that weight off. I think he's got to drop some of the weight for his long-standing career, for his health-wise, but he is something that you've never seen in college basketball.
When you talk about the weight, you're talking about the beating on his knees, his joints.
Yeah, just over a long period of time. 82-game season, a long season.
I will tell you this also. I think teams, the community, locker room are going to love having him a part of that. In the number of different times I had a chance to interview him, especially when I interviewed him with R.J. Barrett, he loves playing the game. He loves being a part of a team. And he's still, I know we say this all the time, he's still like a kid. I mean, he's still a teenager, and you can sense that sort of immaturity. I'm saying in a good way, like he's a sponge and wants to just sort of enjoy this all.
Yeah, I mean, he loves playing the game, and especially you didn't mention he loves playing at Duke. You mentioned all those things. You didn't say he loves playing at Duke also. But that's the thing about it. Why he came back when he was hurt because he loves playing the game of basketball. It's not about the money. It's about the joy of playing the game of basketball. So I think the fans of New Orleans and the fans of the NBA are going to love having him.
A lot of people took note of that as well. After the knee sprain, he could have sat out. He was already the number 1 pick. He decided to come back and play the game. All right, you're representing the Memphis Grizzlies here with the number 2 pick.
And with the number 2 pick, Memphis will select Ja Morant from Murray State. And if you didn't get a chance to see Morant during the NCAA tournament, well, you missed something, because against Marquette, he put on a show, a triple-double, 17 points, 16 assists, 11 boards. But even before that, he made a name for himself at Murray State in the OVC. They ended up winning the conference tournament to make sure they got to the NCAA tournament. But he is a special player. He's got a great edge to him in that nothing was handed to him, Billy. He had to earn it. He goes to Murray State because basically no other high-level recruited him, and he has put himself in this position. And when I talked to him when we were doing the lottery show in Chicago, we talked about players like Damian Lillard from Weber State, like Steph Curry from Davidson, guys that didn't go to the Dukes of the world and had to earn it, and that's what he did.
Yeah, I love him because he's a basketball player. You know, he doesn't have a lot of big muscles. He just got a basketball build, and he plays the game of basketball. He makes plays on the court that just come from reactionary. If the guy cuts him off, he gets to the hole, gets by him. He pulls up for a 3 and makes it. It reminds me like how Allen Iverson played. Allen wasn't a great shooter, wasn't a great driver, but he just scored, and he just has a knack for scoring, and that's why I look at Ja Morant. He just makes the plays to win, whether it's dunking on somebody, making that pass, shooting a 3. It's just basketball plays, and it comes easy to him.
Bob Cousy Award winner as the best point guard in the land last season, is coming off a minor knee surgery, but no one expects that to affect his career moving forward. All right, back to you, Billy. Number 3, lots of folks in Manhattan are waiting to hear what you have to say about the Knicks.
Well, I'm going to go with the guy that Andy said was the consensus number 1 at the beginning of college basketball season, and that's R.J. Barrett out of Duke, Zion's teammate. Now, R.J. is almost like a Tracy McGrady type basketball player. He's a guy that handles the basketball, not as great as an athlete as Tracy, but when he goes to the hole, he can finish with his left and right hand, and he has a knack for squeezing through and getting the ball up, whether it's left hand or right hand, and finding a way to score. The one area he'll have to improve on is shooting his jump shot, but he's a guy that's not afraid to work, so he'll go in the gym, he'll work with the coaches. I think New York is going to love him. I think his game will translate better to the NBA because there'll be a lot more spacing on the floor in college. As a team scouted him and Zion, they start packing in and made it tough for him to drive. But I think his game will translate tremendous in the pros.
And here's what's crazy. The night of the lottery, there was a lot of this, just exhaling and, absolute disappointment that the Knicks did not get the number 1 pick. But they essentially did get a number 1 pick. As Billy was saying, he was the number 1 pick prior to Zion Williamson.
Right.
And nothing has changed. He is a number 1 pick type talent. He's just going number 3. They are getting a star in New York. Everything's going to be fine. The world's not ending. The garden's not falling apart. They've got a star who can certainly help this franchise climb back up.
Well, it's got to be perfect or terrible, or they wouldn't be Knicks fans, right? I mean, there's no in between.
But it's almost like the year LeBron got drafted. It was LeBron, then the guy number 3. I think it was Bosh was in that draft. Carmelo was in that draft. Dwayne Wade. So everybody's like, we didn't get LeBron. But those other guys end up being pretty good players further down the draft. So
or Darko.
Well, yes. I sort of skipped Darko at number 2. You had to bring it up.
Somebody got Darko.
And people say, Darko who?
Yeah, exactly. That was a long time ago now. Much more to get to. Just getting warmed up here. 27 mock drafts so far. 3 first-team All-Americas. 2 players from Duke. 1 from Murray State. That leads us to the Lakers, wink, wink, who have the 4th overall pick. Tom Penn explains what's going on with their big picture situation.
Wow, it's all big picture in Los Angeles. Forget about the draft. They're in go-for-it mode, and it's going to be about free agency. Now that they have LeBron paired with AD, just what they wanted, the big question is, what do they do next? They only have $24 million in cap space because they're giving so much money to the 3 guys that they have. $70 million between LeBron, AD, and Kuzma. Do they go for a big 3 here where they get a 3rd guy to complement them? Or do they spread it around with multiple veterans? Here's what they need. They need complementary players. They need shooters. They need veterans that know what they're doing. And they need those ring chasers. The Warriors every year have gotten the best bargain free agents to come because they want to come for that ring. Well, guess what? The Lakers are favored for the ring. They should be able to ring up their phone and get a lot of yeses. The question is, how are they going to spend that money? Now, they have the 4th pick, Andy. You have the 4th pick. You know it's going back to New Orleans. So who should David Griffin take as a complimentary player to Zion?
So David Griffin now on the phone with Rob Pelinka trying to orchestrate this. And we said at the beginning, you have the top 3. That's the biggest consensus we've seen in decades where the 1, 2, 3 is locked. So the draft really starts at 4. And that's where I'm going with DeAndre Hunter from the National Championship Virginia Cavaliers. Hunter, remember everyone, was hurt for the game against UMBC last year. Did not play.
Right.
So we can't blame him. Came back, ACC Defensive Player of the Year. In every statistical category during his career at Virginia, he got better. He is a great defender. He's got a skill that transfers immediately to the NBA. His offensive game is only going to improve, Billy. So if he stays in New Orleans, they get a guy that they know what they're getting out of him. They know exactly his skill set. If he's on the move, I think he's got value as a player.
He does, because he's a proven guy. He can play defense, he can score, he's got a great size. The way this game is played, it fits for him. He can shoot the 3, he can guard guys on the perimeter. I love his demeanor on the court, and the one thing about it, he's won. UVA players win, and when winning translates to the pro game. So I love everything about him, and I think if Griff keeps him, he'll fit in nicely with them.
He knocked down 4 threes, had 27 in the national championship game. And to oversimplify things, as we tend to do with these players in terms of their evaluation, 3-and-D guy, right? Coming in, you know that right away. What else can he potentially do in the NBA?
Well, I think it's his leadership, because he has won. Sometimes guys come in the league and they haven't won. They don't know how to, lead. He's going to come in and know what he's been taught by his coach there. He's going to come in and give leadership to this organization. Him and Zion both. Zion is a little younger, but if he's going there, they both have won. So they know what it takes, and they play for great coaches and played in a good league as well.
And he wants to and likes playing defense. That's huge.
That's a good thing.
You know what I mean? He doesn't care necessarily that he gets all the stats on the offensive side. He's okay going in and being a defensive stopper.
If it's Alvin Gentry or who knows who else, depending on what David Griffin decides to do with this pick, they'll love that. Coaches like that sort of thing.
Well, and the one thing is the way they play, too, because they get up and down the floor and run. I think he'll fit in that space. A little bit different in UVA because they like to control tempo, but I think with athleticism, with Zion, he will fit.
UVA, even with the 300, however many Division I teams, they're always dead last in pace. And he's going to a New Orleans team that Alvin Gentry would like to make number 1 if humanly possible. All right, 5th pick is owned by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Back to you, Billy.
Well, there's a guard that plays at UNC and I love, and that's Kobe White. He's 6'5", 190 pounds. I love everything about him. He's a guy that can score, put the ball on the floor. He's bigger than John Morant, so I think he can finish. But with that hair, he may be like 6'7". But the one thing I like about him, he's not afraid to take big shots, and he will put the ball on the floor and go to the hole. Now, people may say they got Colin Sexton there. Why would they take another guard? I think you can put them in the backcourt together and they can play together because they both handle the basketball. Beeline's offense is a 2-guard front a lot of times. Now you can get 2 of these guards, put them back there, and let them play basketball.
And there are no positions anymore, right?
Exactly.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Well, and to your point, I think we're going to talk about this later when they have another pick with John Beilein. Think about the other guards he had, most recently Xavier Simpson. Go back to Trey Burke. He likes a scoring lead guard. Kobe White became that at North Carolina. I think he will love this selection. And yet again, a player that I thought might be available for my team coming up, he has snatched away from me.
That's going to happen from time to time. Roy Williams called him the best scoring point guard he's ever coached. That includes Kansas and North Carolina. With Beilein's offense, if he's paired with Colin Sexton, what kinds of adjustments will he have to make coming into the NBA?
Well, the big issue for him is decision-making. I saw him early in the season, and then I saw him later in the season, and things improved dramatically, which is natural. He was a freshman. So I think that's what you're going to see from him is, Beilein goes back to the fundamentals, and we'll see a lot of that with him coaching, even in the NBA, passing, moving, your feet, your hands, everything. And, I think they'll just try to tweak that, which is a natural sort of maturation for a player that's only been playing at the highest level for 1 year.
Well, it's going to be interesting for him because he's got some veteran guys on that team, and Kevin Love and those guys are going to say, we're going to go back to the fundamentals. Those guys are going to say, Coach, we've been in this league for a while. So.
Right.
But the interesting thing right now, we've done this mock draft. 4 out of the 5 players drafted from the ACC. Which tells you how talented that league was.
All right, let's see if it continues. 6th pick owned by the Phoenix Suns. Andy, you've got it.
All right, so the Suns, you could argue, need everything. I mean, they're not in this position for no reason. But Darius Garland, to me, is one of the more intriguing players in this draft. That's why I have them taking. He was at Vanderbilt, but only briefly because he got injured early. So he only played basically a handful of games and then went home and to rehab, which is not the norm, but that might be the new normal if a player gets hurt like this. But he's got the talent. Had he stayed healthy, we'd be talking about him up in that John Morant grouping, in that top 3. Morant passes him, maybe Kobe White as well. But before he got hurt, he had 33 against Liberty right at the beginning of the season. So, he has the talent to certainly take his game immediately to the NBA. And look, with no Darius Garland, Vanderbilt went winless in the SEC. So He was pretty important.
Is a torn meniscus a clean enough injury, for lack of a better term, to not give you any concerns about picking him at 6, for instance?
Well, it depends about the meniscus. If they repair it, then it takes a lot longer for them to sit out because you want it to heal. If they trim it out, then it come back sooner. But at his age, I'm not worried about that. The ACLs, those type of injuries are much more complicated. But the meniscus, I'm not as worried about it. But I do like his game. And if you go back and think about Joel Embiid, when he was at Kansas, he missed a lot of time. He slipped in the draft board. Sixers drafted him. He got hurt that year, but now he's playing and he's pretty good. So I think this is a kid that could turn out to be almost like a Joel Embiid, somebody to get him down low, and he could be one of the best players in the draft.
I guess the follow-up question would be, in terms of fit with Phoenix, a scoring point guard playing alongside Devin Booker, is that a fit?
Well, I think they need a point guard. I mean, they need a point guard.
They needed a point guard for a while.
Because they tried to play Booker there. But if you think about Damian Lillard and McCollum up there, both those guys are scoring. They make it work. I think the more guys you have on the floor that can score the basketball and put pressure on defense, I think that'll be okay. Because they need another guy that can take some pressure off Booker, and I think he'll do that by scoring the basketball.
Yeah, I mean, look, this was a situation where, and he told us at the lottery that he was ready to go and will be ready to go, but it's out of sight, out of mind. I think people are just sort of nitpicking his game a little bit because we just didn't see him for months.
Right.
Had we seen him, Vanderbilt would not have been winless. They would have been somewhere, maybe even a bubble team. Maybe they would have gotten in. I mean, he was that valuable to Vanderbilt.
We didn't see much of Kyrie Irving when he was
played 11 games.
That turned out okay.
And it did okay.
So far, he's been pretty good in the NBA. All right, stick with us. Much more on the way. 6 picks into our 2019 mock draft presented by State Farm. Time for the Chicago Bulls, who are a lottery loser, 4th worst record in the league, but they'll pick 7th on draft night. And Billy, you are representing Chicago.
Well, I have Chicago taking Cam Reddish out of Duke, 6'8", 210 pounds. And the reason is that Chicago traditionally have taken a lot of Duke players. You go back to Jay Williams, you go back to Luol Deng, you go back to Wendell Carter, Chris Duhon. So there's a tradition there of them taking Duke players. Here's a player that was probably going to be top 3 selection in the draft going into the college basketball season. Didn't have the season he thought he was going to have. Shot 33% from three-point range on 7 threes. He has the ability to shoot the basketball, got great size, great length. The one thing is, how bad does he want it? But he has all the skill set to do it. He's got the athletic ability to do it. Now it's up to him. And I think if the Bulls take him, I think he'll fit with them how they play.
Yeah, he's sort of the quiet member of that Duke.
Yeah.
Really foursome when you include Trey Jones, who decided to stay put. He made a big shot against Florida State, sort of the biggest of the year when he had that game winner. But once again, I think he's another player that has barely scratched the surface of his potential and we could really see him shine in the NBA. And with the Bulls, I mean, they're going to need someone like that to come in and give them that pop.
Well, you see that all the time with some of the super teams that the Dukes and North Carolinas and Kentuckys can recruit when they bring in all these McDonald's All-Americans. Not everybody's going to score 20 a game, and we've seen a bunch of instances where guys come out and exceed what they were doing at the college level. But you touched on something that I think a lot of people have wondered about, and that's kind of his motor and how much he wants it. He's a bit of a polarizing figure.
He is. And he's that player that, a lot of people say he's one of those players that can get you fired as a coach because of the potential that he has. But I do think he's a good kid. And I think the problem when he was at Duke, when you were with Zion, he was a phenom, and he took a lot of oxygen out of the room. And I think RJ was able to fill that void. And I think Cam sort of fell through the cracks a little bit, not because of the way they played, just because Zion was getting so much and RJ. And so I think Cam going to the pros now is going to be in a different environment, and I think he'll get more shots because the floor is space and there's more double teams. So I think this will be a great opportunity for him because he's going to get a lot of looks, and now he's got to knock them down.
Now playing for Jim Boylan, if all it plays out, I mean, he's going to expect that motor to be,
Jim's
running.
Jim's going to either get that motor running or he's going to turn it off and sit you down a little bit.
Jim's a little demanding.
Yes.
All right, now to the Hawks are another lottery loser. They expected to do much better in terms of the odds, but they also have 3 first-round picks coming in, and you've got them at number 8.
Yeah, so we'll see if they keep this. The one thing I know about the Atlanta Hawks is they don't need a point guard because they've got Trae Young. So at this point in the draft, the player that has already slipped now to number 8 that I absolutely love is Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech. First player at Texas Tech to score over 1,000 points in just a couple of seasons. It was last season that he was not the main man when Texas Tech got a number 2 seed. This season, everyone thought, expectations would be lower, and yet Culver, Big 12 Player of the Year, leads Texas Tech not just to the Big 12 co-championship at K-State, past Kansas, but to the national championship game. And very much like DeAndre Hunter, he likes to defend, which certainly Atlanta and a lot of the teams could have and would want in the NBA. And so he's a tremendous young man. He's a sponge. I think he's ready for this next transition in his career. He can score. He can do a little bit of everything. Look at the numbers right there. I think he would be a great complement to a Trae Young.
No, I love everything about him, especially the fact that he loves to play defense. In this league, you want to have a lot of guys at the wing position that can defend because you're going to face a lot of offensive guys that can score. So you're going to put him at. It reminds me a lot of Kawhi Leonard because of the fact his scoring touch, shooting sometimes vanished in games and people question his shot. That's like Kawhi. Kawhi came in as more of a defensive player. His shot got better and became a great 3D player.
Had a tough shooting night in the national title game, just 5 of 22 in that game, but a two-way player, the Big 12 Player of the Year. And when you're evaluating wings defensively in this day and age, what are you looking at?
Well, you're looking for length. You want to have guys with long arms and like guys with big hands, but also you want guys that are not afraid to compete. They don't have to be good laterally, but you've got to be willing to compete because if you don't, there's guys in this league that will take your heart when you get on the court. So you got to be willing to compete and go after them every night.
The other 2 things I'll say quickly about their run is even though he was the leader, he was okay deferring to someone even like Matt Mooney, this transfer that came from South Dakota. He didn't need all the attention. And when you go into the NBA and you're going to, let's say, hypothetically, a team like Atlanta where Trae Young now is the guy, he's not going to expect anything. Right. He has to earn it, which is what they do in Texas Tech and in Lubbock. So I think that's very critical. And to his statistics, he had timely shots. There were times where the numbers didn't look great, but then he'd make that big shot to either kickstart a run or, continue one to really elevate a lead from 5 to 8 or what have you.
All right, we're on to the number 9 pick held by the Washington Wizards. And Tom, the Wizards have significant problems, 2 significant injuries to John Wall, not to mention an even more significant contract they owe him moving forward, and the fact that at the moment there's no permanent decision maker on staff with Washington. They're still looking for their top exec.
Yeah, that's my first big thing with them. Who's the boss in Washington? It's very unusual to not have a definitive general manager. Tommy Shepard's the interim GM, very smart guy, but we don't know who the boss is long term. There's all sorts of rumors about who they're hiring. They're capped out, injured, and are they stuck in the middle now? You referenced John Wall's injury. He's owed $38 million next year, first year of many more years. Beal's owed $27 million. This is what they have. And they can't, it's very difficult to get better because they don't have the assets to go trade. They don't have cap room to play with. So you got Wall and Beal as your core. So the big challenge right now is how do you get some greatness? Can you get greatness at number 9? And, look, Stoudemire went at 9. Paul Pierce went at 10. At 11 was Klay Thompson. So it's there, Billy. Who you taking for greatness at 9?
Well, I'm going to go to the University of North Carolina and Nasir Little. He's 6'6", 225. And like you said, Tom, this team is going to have to rebuild. With Wall out, they shouldn't try to rush to make the playoffs. So if you take Little, he's got length. He's explosive at the rim, 7'1" wingspan. I love everything about him. His athleticism, finishing at the rim, very explosive. They will allow him to give him time to play because there's no pressure on them going on. And my goal for them is let him play with the young guys, and try to get back in the lottery again next year and add another player to this team because you had him. The one thing the Wizards need, they need length at the wing spot. They don't have any length. They've traded Otto Porter. They've gotten rid of a lot of their long wing players, and here's one that can help them.
You know, Nasir Little is a great example of why, you know, and I know we may change the one and done and all that, but he's a great example of why it actually was important to go to college because he wasn't ready when the season started. And for whatever reason, which is normal for a freshman, it just took him longer, and he became a much more important player later in the season, got a feel of the game, the speed going from high school to college. And so it may just take him another, a little bit longer before he get into the NBA. But the potential is there. He certainly can have an impact and be another complementary piece if, while everyone stays put.
He was ranked as high as number 2 among high school prospects coming into North Carolina.
Right,
his
and it just
talent
took
there,
him,
it's recognized. It didn't show up in the numbers necessarily. All right. More to come here. A promising start to Trae Young's career sets up a summer of interesting possibilities here in Atlanta. Picks, cap room up to number 10, and already the second pick for the Atlanta Hawks, who after a 29-win season have a lot to feel good about. 3 first-round picks, including number 17, currently owned by the Nets. That'll be conveyed after the draft. Cap room as well, Tom Penn.
Yeah, they're on the road to respectability here in Atlanta. The first thing they need to do, no matter what in this draft, is find a complimentary A player, another A player to go with Trae Young. He at least has given them their identity. They have 8, 10, and 17. Do they package those and move up? Maybe they go up to 4. Whatever they're going to do, they need to focus on complementing this young identity player. He's the signature player on that team. Can they get another guy to run with him that they know they can grow up together? And then they still have the best use of that cap room. Do they go try to get a signature free agent? They don't have enough to get a max guy. Or do they take on players like Alan Crabb and get more future assets? You saw those future firsts. They're banking assets. They're letting their young guys grow up. Can they take a bigger step this year? And Andy, can you find somebody at 10 to help them do it?
Possibly. I think Jared Culver, though,
I'd like a little more
8,
confidence out of
Well, I think Culver answers that first question because, like Trae Young, Culver was not a lock coming out after 1 year, so he stayed another year. Trae Young comes out after 1 year, but was not a lock going into that freshman year. So at 10, I'm going at this point a little need-based. I'm going big. I'm going Jackson Hayes from Texas. Now, Hayes was hurt, did not play in their NIT run for the Longhorns, but I got to think back to what Texas has done, okay, which is they produce bigs, whether it's Rick Barnes or Shaka Smart, Mo Bamba, Miles Turner. There have been bigs that have come through Texas.
Jared Allen.
Marcus Aldridge.
You keep going, thank you. And they can do a little bit of everything. Agile, athletic, long, block shots, rim protector, run the floor. And Hayes is a little bit of all that, but he's just scratching the surface at the tender age of 19.
No, and I like him the fact he is young, but also he can finish at the rim. As Trae Young is doing pick and roll, now you got to make a decision. Do you stay with Trae Young or you leave the big fella and then you can throw it to the rim as you saw in the highlights before? That's the game now, is putting the big guy in the pick and roll, make that other guy that's guarding the big guy make a decision. Do you stop the ball? Then you got to find the big guy going to the hole because Jared Allen's made a living doing that with the Brooklyn Nets.
Could be a good compliment to John Collins as well, who really expanded his game in his second year in the league last year as a jump shooter.
The biggest knock on Hayes, and he told us this in Chicago, is strength. And that will come. He's 19.
Right.
I mean, he's got to get stronger to deal with the physicality of the NBA. Those highlights you just saw there where he's sort of coasting in, that's not going to happen. He's going to get knocked. But
when you
work on that.
When you're drafting a 19-year-old big guy, they tend not to have their body, and they're going to fill out. So you understand that. And that's why you take them on their potential because you figure, I can get them stronger. I can help them become a better basketball player, better than they can do in college.
Shot nearly 73% from the field last year.
A lot of dunks.
I know. That tells you that usually tells you where his offensive game is right now.
But he didn't miss a lot of them then.
And you know what? That's not a bad thing, right?
Right.
All right, on to number 11. The Minnesota Timberwolves are on the clock, Billy.
Well, I'm going to take Sekou Doumbouya. I think I got it right there. I love his size. He's young, a little raw. He's athletic, still learning the game. But I think coming over to the NBA now, you can see it. He's a lot like Billy Owens, how he can handle the ball and do a lot of things on the floor. Defensively, I think he's got a great game ready for the NBA. Offensively, it'll come. And you're basically drafting a potential, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm potentially looking where he's going to progress. If you look at Anu Combo when he came to the league, was really raw, but he developed into a very nice player. Not putting him in that category, but I'm saying sometimes you got to take a guy. If they got work ethic like he does, they'll turn into be pretty good players.
And two things here. Minnesota has a history of drafting someone internationally.
Yeah.
So they've done that in the past, regardless of who's been making the decisions. And then secondly, when you get into this range, now we're entering that late lottery, a lot of times it is players that you don't expect will help you immediately, and that could be the case here with Sekio.
This is all upside.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this kid's been playing professionally since he was 15, but relatively new to the game still, long, athletic, and you just hope it all pans out. Right?
And what you're looking for is, does the kid have work ethic? So you do your background. If they do, then you know, once again, you're going to take them and put them in within your confines of your organization and work with them to get them better.
Doumbouya would be the first player ever drafted from the West African nation of Guinea. All right, to number 12. Andy is now picking for the Charlotte Hornets.
And we don't know about Kemba Walker, but let's assume he's there. And I think he's going to have a great opportunity here to feed on the wing Rui Hachimura from Gonzaga. Now, I don't think Michael Jordan will regret taking another zag after taking Adam Morrison, if you remember, a few years ago.
Why'd you have to go there?
Well, I got to bring it up. Because, look, while Morrison was much more of a finished product, Hachimura is just beginning to shine and blossom. He got better every single season at Gonzaga. Originally from Japan, learning English, absorbing the game, won the Julius Erving Small Forward Award. He is a tremendous young man. He is a sponge. He'll be a great locker room player. And when he gets drafted, because I've seen the Japanese media follow him around during the regular season, it will be an event. Naomi Osaka is certainly a massive name in Japan in tennis. Rui Hachimura has become a major name in basketball in Japan.
So I think Michael makes some money off Japan sponsors and dealerships.
See?
So there you go. You know, it goes all into that play.
That's why I can totally see it.
But you know, I do like him for the fact that one thing about when you're drafting players, you look for where they play for in college. And playing at Gonzaga or playing at Kansas, playing at those major programs, you look at what the coach does. And Gonzaga guys are very fundamental. They're smart and they're team basketball players. So that's what I like about him. His game has got better, but his skill set is going to fit Charlotte because of the fact he understands he's coming to a team and he doesn't have to be a star, and I think he'll fit in great for them.
He will be the first Japanese player drafted into the NBA. A couple of other Japanese players have made it to the league, but neither was drafted. And to your point, he's wildly popular back home and considered the future of Japanese basketball. They're banking on him for their national team moving forward.
And guess where the Olympics are in 2020?
Tokyo.
There you go.
Yes.
There's a lot of knowledge here at this desk.
All comes together. All right, a bummer of a season in Boston spills into a summer in which many believe Kyrie Irving is poor.
Well, Miami Heat, you know, they're a team that likes toughness. So I look at P.J. Washington for somebody for them. He reminds me like Carl Landry. He's got that wiry body, loves contact, loves to be physical, can score, can step out and shoot the three. But I just think the way he plays the game, the way the NBA's played with his physicality, he will fit in great with Miami. So I like him going there.
What I love about P.J. Washington, very similar to what we saw in the finals with Durant, where if you're hurt, are you going to come back and play? And that's exactly what P.J. Washington did, very much like Zion Williamson with Duke early in the season. He was projected probably not to play in their NCAA tournament game, before they ended up losing to Auburn, but he was going to make sure that he was going to be on the floor. And regardless of whether or not he was going to get hurt further, whatever, he is a team guy, he's a winner, and wanted to make sure he was out there.
And that's the kind of guy you want. You know, when you start talking to these guys, you find out, because when you give guys money, you don't know if they're going to quit playing or not. And when you have guys in college that are willing to play hurt, some guys will say, I'm going to sit out and not going to play. You see it in football when the bowl games. If their team's not in a major bowl game, a quarterback, I'm not going to play because I don't want to hurt myself, which to me is tough. If you played all season with your guys, how do you bail on them now in the bowl game? That's what you like about this kid like Zion. They came back to play in these games.
And also, he came back to college because he knew he wasn't ready to declare for the NBA draft last season. It's one thing just to be drafted. He wanted to be a contributor, and he can be now.
Led Kentucky in scoring and rebounding last season. All right, let's go to Tom on the Boston Celtics. As always, they have multiple picks in the first round. They also have multiple problems after a really disappointing season, which, remember, began with a lot of folks picking them to represent the East in the NBA Finals. There was dysfunction along the way. Now you're looking at Kyrie Irving changing his mind during the season, maybe walking, and now Al Horford has opted out of his deal for 2019-2020.
Yeah, they were built to win it this year. What a disappointment when they didn't. Now they have so many free agents. They have Kyrie Irving, Al Horford, Rozier, Morris, Baines. All these rotation players are now free. They're not going to have cap room to replace those, so they're not really in the free agent market. They're likely to spend some version of that money on those players, and then it comes down to the young guns that are coming of age. Tatum and Brown, they're the real core to this team, and how great are they going forward, and how are they going to reshape this roster with a highly likely Kyrie Irving to leave? There are just so many questions at this point as to what's going to happen there. But look, guys, it's still the Eastern Conference, which we haven't talked about yet, is just wide open. So is the West. Everybody's got a chance. So if the Celtics tool it the right way, they can sure as heck challenge again, get their chemistry right. They've got 3 picks again. Every year they have 3 picks. What are you going to do with the first pick, Andy, at 14?
Well, I'll tell you, Tom, growing up in New England, having friends still there, living there, a lot of Celtics fans actually enjoyed last season's team better because it was younger, it had a lot of energy, and it was a bit unproven. And it may go back to that next season, and I'm going to add a player that fits that mold, and his name is Brandon Clark from Gonzaga. Danny Ainge has loved recruiting out west, watches a lot of Zags, he and Austin Ainge, and Brandon Clark has developed into one of the best players in the country. Transferred from San Jose State, sat out, kind of like Kelly Olynyk, a former Celtics draftee, and improved his game in all aspects. He's a great rim protector. He's got a nose for the backboard, finds those rebounds, and Billy, who knows what's going to happen with Morris and Baines at the end of that rotation list that Tom was mentioning. Clark could be a rotation player right now on a roster like Boston.
Well, I like him going there because what you said, he's athletic. With Horford opting out, with Morris uncertainty, with Baines, they need a guy with this athleticism on the floor to play with Jason Tatum, to play with Jaylen Brown. So he does fit, like you said, like what Danny Ainge likes. He's a smart player. He's athletic, can finish at the rim, can block shots. And even if Horford does resign, you got a young guy that can learn from him and learn. And so sometimes you want a veteran in front of him to teach that young guy. So everything you said, I think he's a great fit for Boston Celtics.
He led the nation in field goal percentage and blocks at 6'8". That is an unusual combination at that size. All right, next up, the Pistons were now out of the lottery. Billy is representing Detroit here.
Well, I've got Detroit taking Keldon Johnson out of Kentucky, 6'6", 215. He's an athletic wing, got a great first step, can get to the hole. I love everything about his length. In this league, I know I keep saying it over, you want length. You want guys with long athletic ability to finish at the roll. And the fact he's a good three-point shooter, not awesome, but great. And you become better in the pros because you're going to get standstill jump shots. The Pistons need people at the wing. They need a length there because they don't have that. They've got the big guys inside. They've got the wing. They need some wing guys with a lot of length. I love everything about his length.
It's kind of similar to Cam Reddish in that, not in their games necessarily, but in their attention in terms of that Keldon Johnson was not the star at Kentucky, did not get all that oxygen the way that Zion and RJ did, and Cam was sort of to the side. PJ Washington was the guy. Tyler Hero, who we may talk about, he had some big shots. And it seems sometimes at Kentucky that Keldon Johnson was not the player that got all the attention. And so now if he pops up here in the middle of the draft, it shouldn't be a shock because he has the talent to be in this position.
Kind of love that John Calipari midseason needed rebounding. He decided to have a 17-rebound game, right? As a coach,
told him, I want to rebound, go do it. That's
right.
That's what you want as a coach.
As a coach, you say, I need this. Oh, yeah, I can do that. Okay, good. Yeah, like to have those guys on your roster if you can. Much more coming up here. The Magic quietly pulled off the biggest improvement in the league last season. How they can take the next step forward when we come back for games last season, Tom Penn.
Yeah, big bump for them after 6 years, 6 dark years in the desert away from the playoffs. Here's the problem, Matt. You'd also struggle to remember a signature player for them. They have no signature player after all those lottery picks. So what are they going to do to get an identity? Do they take a chance on a trade, go after a veteran like a Chris Paul or somebody that's out on the market? Or do they just grind it out and get better with their style? You see the young talent that they do have. They're improving. They're incrementally getting better. But the real question for me, the real big picture issue for me is, how are they going to do something to redefine the direction they're going in to get interesting league-wide, to get in the chase for the Eastern Conference, which is wide open? So It starts somewhere. Let's start it with this pick. Andy, who you got?
Well, I don't have a great answer for you because I'm not going to give you a superstar at number 16, but I will give you a versatile player. And Tom, what is hot right now is Canada. So I'm going to give you a Canadian. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker from Virginia Tech. Earlier in the season, Justin Robinson got hurt for Virginia Tech, which forced Alexander-Walker to play some point. So he can play the 1, he can play the 2. Who knows, he can maybe play a little 3 if you need him because he can do a little bit of everything. And his numbers improved each year, helped lead Virginia Tech to the Sweet 16. So he's not a household name, maybe not even in the ACC at times, but he can deliver the goods for Orlando if they take him here because he can be a little bit of everything for them.
Well, I think you're right. They're taking a player that they're looking for in the future, not somebody who's going to come in and impact them right away. I like everything, his skill set. Played for a crazy coach in it that pushed him and drove him and buzz. But I do like his intensity level. And I think going to Orlando now, it'll be somebody that they can project and work with as he gets better because I don't see him stepping in right away and playing major minutes, but I do help him down the road.
All right, we're going to go to Billy for the 17th pick, which the Nets will be picking on the Hawks' behalf, thanks to the trade that will bring Alan Crabb here to Atlanta. So it says Nets on the board, but this is for Atlanta.
Oh, really? Oh, you messed me up.
Sorry.
No, I've got the Nets picking for Atlanta and Tyler Hero. He's a 6'5", 6'6" shooter from Kentucky, 195 pounds. He didn't shoot the ball as great as people thought he should have shot it at Kentucky, but he did make big shots. He can shoot off the dribble. I like the fact that he's a guy that's played against athletes. He'll struggle a little bit guarding athletes, but he did do it in practice at Kentucky. He'll make shots more in the pros, and especially playing in Atlanta, playing with Trey. I do like his game to translate better in the NBA than it did in college. And if you got a point guard like that in Atlanta, you need as many shooters around to space the floor.
Look, it would be incredibly rare for them to keep all 3 picks, but just hypothetically, if they do, I actually think they all fit. You know, Hero and Hayes and Culver, they don't play the same position, obviously.
Right.
They actually could all complement Trae Young if in some world where they were to keep them.
It'd be a really, really young and interesting team.
Yes, but
if that were
there's
all
no
to take
duplication
place.
there.
That's true. All right, 2-18. Pacers had a fun regular season until the Victor Oladipo injury and then kind of quashed their playoff hopes, but they've got the 18th pick here.
So Kevin Pritchard, Larry Bird, that administration of the franchise for years has always looked, from what I can tell, more of a veteran guy. And I think Cam Johnson from North Carolina fits Indiana. He's improved in every facet of his game, from transferring from Pitt to North Carolina. North Carolina players have come in ready to play at the next level. He developed into a leader as well at North Carolina. He would come in with a skill set ready to contribute with Indiana from day one.
No, I love him going to Indiana because he's a veteran guy who's going to be able to step in and play with them right away because the other guys will take a lot of the pressure. I think he can make shots. I think he can finish at the rim. I think it's an ideal pick for Indiana.
A veteran player who is 23 years old. Really unusual for a first-round pick in the NBA. All right, stick with us. Still a dozen more first-round picks to get to and a deeper look at the Warriors' fascinating and uncertain picks, starting with the 19th selection, and Billy has a chance to make it for him.
Well, I'm going to take Bruno Fernando, 6'10", 240-pound center. A little tidbit, Mark Turgeon, his head coach at Maryland, played for R.C. Buford when RC was an assistant for Kansas, so I think he has all the intel that you want. But his size, athletic ability, I think he can finish at the rim. He's someone I think you take in their program, they'll make him stronger, they'll make him better. He has a good IQ. I just like everything about him. And within San Antonio's system, when they take guys in like this, they work with them, and become finished products. There's a lot of guys like Danny Green that went there and came out much better players. So I love everything about him.
This is a great pick if this happens for San Antonio. This is a player who knew who he was and who he wasn't a year ago. He explored the NBA draft, talked to Mark Turgeon a lot about it, wasn't ready, came back, had an impactful year for Maryland, became a much better rim protector. He's becoming a better offensive player, and he's very prideful. He would become the first Angolan drafted into the NBA. This would mean the world to him when he gets drafted, not if, when he gets drafted.
And at least in our mock draft, that would make him the third player to be the first from his country drafted into the NBA. All right, we're to number 20, which is the Celtics' second pick of the first round.
All right, so you have to do a little intel here when someone gets invited to the green room. They're there for a purpose. And Goga Bitadze got invited, and I was told he's going somewhere between 12 and 22, which would fall him right in line there with the Celtics. He's a 6'11" Georgian, 7'2" wingspan. Not a great athlete, but certainly if they were to keep him or stash, Billy knows all about the draft and stash. A lot of GMs do that for a lot of times. He could develop, be much more physical. But as we've said throughout the show, the Celtics may have a need for another big, and he's only 19.
Well, and if they take him, like you said, they could stash him. They'll know what they need. If they don't need him, let him play over there, bring him over later.
All right, he broke Luka Doncic's record for the top player efficiency rating by a teenager in EuroLeague history. And Doncic, by the way, was pretty good.
Yeah, not bad.
As a rookie. All right, off to Tom Penn now for the Oklahoma City Thunder at 21. And Tom, the Thunder are in the position that teams don't necessarily want to be in. They are capped out. Yep. They don't have much flexibility, and they've been eliminated in the first round 3 straight years.
Yeah, but what they do have is talent, and they have A-list talent. Are they as good as anybody in the West if they get it right? It all comes down to that dynamic duo of Russell Westbrook and Paul George, and then you throw in Steven Adams. Their core is rock solid, so they don't have big problems. They got to tinker around the edges. It all comes down to how great can this guy be again? Can he find that gear? Can he get his efficiency back up? Can Paul George be that finisher that he's become this year? Still be the wing defender, shutdown guy. Steven Adams, rock solid in the middle. They're rock solid. The problem is, to your point, they're capped out. They're taxed out. They're going to have a $60 million tax penalty, but that's just money. Don't need to worry about that. They just need to make those tweaks and those changes and get their chemistry right. So sometimes a draft pick, you throw them in the mix, it changes things up a little bit. What say ye? Who should they draft?
Well, I've got them taking Kevin Porter from USC, 6'5", 215-pound guard. Shot the ball 41% from three-point range. Shot selection, not the greatest at all time, but he's somebody, like you said, with Roberson being hurt most of the year, it gives him another athlete that maybe can play some defense and be a little disruptive. Reminds me a little bit of Deshaun Stevenson. And when you say shot selection, he fits in right with Russell Westbrook, and trying to figure out what's a good shot, what's a bad shot. So, but I do like them taking him.
It's a backhanded compliment if I've ever heard one.
And look, it was a disappointing season for USC, but not necessarily for Kevin Porter. He's ready to make the transition. And as Tom said, I mean, if you can get another player that can complement Russell Westbrook, come off the bench, spell him for a couple of minutes, then that's what you get with Porter.
By the way, this is how significant their payroll and contract situation is. They're not only projected to have the highest payroll in the league next year, but the year after that, you start going out further and further, and they still have salary cap problems potentially. All right, next up, we will go to break, and more of our mock draft 2019 coming up. Nearly a third of the first round still ahead, plus the post-process reality thing, all three. How did this work out?
Well, look.
New England guy, right?
Yes, that's true. Grew up in the Boston area. This is a pick from my heart and my head. I don't know if the Celtics will make, but I think they could.
Okay.
I'm going here with Carson Edwards, and I'm going to tell you why. Because first, I don't think Kyrie Irving's going back to Boston. 2, Terry Rozier is not your anchor. 3, you've got a guy who makes shots. He's built like a tank, okay? And Ainge has drafted Purdue players before. This Purdue player scored 42 in an overtime loss to Virginia in the Elite Eight. He was unbelievable. He had 10 of 19 threes in that game. He had 42 against Villanova a couple games before that, 9 of 16 on threes. Early in the season, 36 in overtime win against Wisconsin. He made 135 threes. He's a winner. He can go right now and I think make shots on an NBA floor.
Well, and if Brad Stevenson, who is an Indianapolis guy, can get intel from Purdue, so he's a point guard I think they can plug in there. They're going to need a point guard. Even if Rozier comes back, even if Kyrie comes back, I think you need another point guard because those guys health-wise, especially Kyrie, has always broken down. So to me, I like him going there, and I like his toughness. That's a Danny Ainge type player, his toughness.
Small point guard who can score. It sounds a lot like Isaiah Thomas.
Well, he is, I'm telling you, he is almost more like, to me, he's almost Vinnie Johnson-like because he heats up and he's stocky.
Microwave.
The build,
yes,
yeah. The build
he can get to the rim, he can finish, and you can't knock him back. I mean, he's going to go right at you.
28 threes in 4 NCAA tournament games this spring for Carson Edwards. To number 23, the Jazz on the clock, Billy.
Well, for the Jazz, Quinn Snyder loves basketball players with high IQ, and I'm going to go with Ty Jerome from UVA, 6'5", 195. He is a very, very smart player on the floor. understands how to move with the basketball, move without the basketball, can knock down big shots, and he's fearful. He'll go to the hole. I love everything about his game and how he would fit with the Utah Jazz, knowing Quinn Snyder and what they want. He's a sneaky defender, can come off screens, but he loves to move and play. Perfect fit for Utah Jazz.
Yeah, look, Malcolm Brogdon has done a great job of being an ambassador for the Virginia program, and I think that we're going to see that going forward with DeAndre Hunter. We're going to see it with Ty Jerome. We'll see if Kyle Guy can also get selected, but I think Jerome is perfect for Utah. He will be a player who will have longevity in this league.
All right, to number 24, and Tom rejoins us now for a look at the Philadelphia 76ers, who on one hand have a ton of talent, on the other hand are only technically an NBA team right now because they don't have very many players under contract.
Well, the ones they have are pretty darn good. Sometimes your off-season is about keep what you got, and that's the focus for the 76ers. Is can they re-sign Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris, J.J. Redick? They're all free agents and more, only 5 players under contract. And then all in the background of are Embiid and Simmons on track to true excellence, to championship excellence. We've seen the step that Embiid has taken. We know they got a dynamic, very talented coach. Embiid has been a stud in the middle. And you saw in Simmons the growth, the maturity of his game, but he still doesn't shoot the ball. They still have those weaknesses in under pressure in the playoffs. They were right there with Toronto. But if that ball bounces differently with Kawhi, this could be a totally different story. But they need to keep what they got. They're going to draft in this draft. So let's look at it. Who would you take in this draft?
All right, well, this may shock some people here, okay? But to me, the best player left on our board is Bol Bol. From Oregon. He is the son of the late Manute Bol, who played in Philadelphia. This would be a great pick for not just that reason, bringing him back to where his father played, but also because he's an unbelievable talent. He had a stress fracture that limited his freshman season. Had that not happened, look at the shot blocking here. Had that not happened, Oregon would not have just been a late bloomer that won the Pac-12 tournament and got to the Sweet 16. They would have, I think, maybe won the Pac-12, been a higher seed. He is that good. He can shoot the three, averaged 21 a game before he got hurt. I know people are going to say, oh, come on, they can't draft someone who's not 100% healthy, but he is that talented. I don't think they could pass on him if he's there.
Well, the Sixers have a history of taking guys that haven't been hurt, especially with feet, so I don't think that'll be a problem with them. But I do like the fact, like you said, he can shoot the ball for his size, so he takes the big guys out. If you watch the Sixers, Joel Embiid's out there. Then they have a guy named Boban, who's another 7'3" foreign player who shoots threes. So I think he fits the way they want to play. The one thing I like about him, he does block shots. And with Joel, with Boban, they like the rim protector in there. So a lot of the tools you have, besides the fact his dad was a Manute, fits with the Sixers.
I think it'd be a great story, wouldn't it? If the Sixers
tremendous
took
story. Yeah.
Manute's son. I mean,
Bol Bol back in Philadelphia would be great.
Boban.
Well, that would just be confusing. But you do your due diligence, obviously, in terms of medicals. You have your staff find out what they can. But when you hear big guy, 7'2", stress fracture in his foot, what kind of alarm bells go off?
I mean, they go off. And what you want to do, you want to try to get as much the imagery, the pictures from the doctors, and you want to find out who did the surgery. Because there's doctors with a great track record. Dr. O'Malley, who's at HSS in New York, is one of the best. And so if I was in Brooklyn, I'd bring him and have him look at the pictures, and I would trust him. The Brooklyn Nets took LeVert, who had the stress fracture in the foot. O'Malley blessed it, and he hasn't had a problem ever since. So it does worry, especially with big guys.
Tantalizing skill set, though, for a guy at 7'2", hit 52% of his threes. Limited games, but still a lot to like about Bol Bol. After an inspired return to the postseason, Brooklyn could be a hot free agent destination, or maybe the Nets simply look to improve on what's working. We'll look at the big picture in Brooklyn.
6'6", 215 wing player. If you watch the Blazers, it's Damian Lillard, it's McCollum in the backcourt. But what about Langford? He gives them some size, a guy that can finish, handle the basketball, great for those guys. And when he's almost like Evan Turner, who's already on the roster, so it gives them another guy that can develop. Would you have Damian Lillard and McCollum? You want guys that can create shots for them, so they don't always have to create shots for themselves. So I love everything about him.
And what you saw in those highlights was tape around his shooting thumb, index finger. And during the Chicago lottery time, he told us, look, he was playing with a ligament damage and throughout the course of the season. And that's why some of his shooting was off, yet he played through it. Kind of like we talked about earlier about Zion at times, and then P.J. Washington. This is a player, had he been 100% healthy, had Indiana progressed to the NCAA tournament, I don't think we would have seen him down in the 20s, which is where ultimately I think he will go. He would have gone higher. He's getting healthy. He'd be a great compliment in Portland.
Just 27% from three-point range.
But, I mean, there's a reason.
Ligament could play a role in that for sure.
That was my problem.
Cavaliers are back with the 26th overall pick.
All right, so I'm going at this point in the draft, and back me up here on this, Billy. I think you're looking for high-value, experienced players for the back part of the first round, and that's where I just think if this happens, John Beilein would be looking right at a Grant Williams from Tennessee, and I love this young man. Two-time SEC Player of the Year, came out of high school, was not expected to do what he did, and basically changed his body, became an All-American, the best player in the SEC 2 years in a row. He is a sponge, absorbs it. He is such a high character. Everyone that interviews him will love him. He would be perfect for John Beilein in everything that he would want to do.
Well, and I like what you said. At this point, you want to get guys with high character, high quality players. You're not reaching for potential here because those guys gone earlier. And the one thing is, I think he probably reached out and talked to the coach, because the college coach talking to the other college coach there, and probably said, what do you think about him? And he probably gave him a great review. And so to me, I think it's a great pick for them.
Yeah, and I want to say earlier in the draft, it's not high character, but I mean, at this point, you're more veteran guys that have been around.
Early in the draft, you tend to take a few more chances for potential. Down here, you try to take guys that, hey, they're down there for a reason, so you want to try to get the guys with the character. Again,
John Beilein entering his first year as not only an NBA coach, but a pro coach, comes in potentially with a guy that Tennessee ran their offense through. What could that mean for him?
Well, John Beilein is the ultimate offensive coach.
Right.
And Grant Williams flourished at Tennessee under Rick Barnes, and I think that he would get all his system. He would run every play. He would never dispute anything that John Beilein would tell him, and he would be a great teacher and mentor for even whatever he learned for even younger guys that may get taken ahead of him.
Yeah, and knowing Rick Barnes, I guarantee he sold them to Beilein and said, you want this guy on your roster. You'll win with him.
All right, let's get to the Nets now. Brooklyn with the 27th pick after finally getting over the hump and back to the postseason. Where are they going here?
Well, I got the Brooklyn Nets taking KZ Okapala. He's 6'8", 210 wing player, and I just love everything about him. A three-point shooter, which the Nets love guys to shoot three. They shoot a lot of threes, and so they're going to take him. He shot 44% from the field, from three-point range. They just didn't. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson didn't pick up his qualifying offer. Didn't offer him a qualifying offer, so he's going to be leaving. So to me, this is a great fit because, one, he can make the three, and he's athletic enough to be a pretty good, decent defender. Not an awesome, but decent defender, and he can make the three-point shot.
And once again, another player that didn't get enough national attention because Stanford underachieved, was not a national name. But, here's what's happening to me as I'm looking forward to my next pick. You've now taken someone that I wanted for my next team. Now I'm going to have to think about who the Warriors are going to select. How often did that happen?
It happens all the time. You sit there and you think, I want this guy, and Sacramento Kings did it to me twice, 2 years in a row when I was in Philadelphia.
All right, so now I got time to think about who I'm going to take because he just took my guy.
It's so inconsiderate.
It is.
Well, let's go over to Tom to talk a little bit more about the Brooklyn Nets. They've established this culture. They were in no man's land for years without picks, without assets, made their way, clawed back into the postseason, and now they're being talked about as a potential free agent destination for some A-list guys. What does their summer look like?
You just described it, a team on the rise, or borough on the rise in Brooklyn. It's really appealing, more so than the Knicks. They have 47 to 68 million in room. That means they can go shopping. The $21 million difference is D'Angelo Russell's cap hold. Do they keep him and add one max player, or do they go for two separate max players, two new guys, and let D'Angelo go? We know they wanted this guy. We know they wanted Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. This is the big shakeup now that Durant is hurt. Kyrie feels like the kind of player that would go to Brooklyn. Kyrie feels like somebody that wants to be in New York, is still on the rise. That's the big question in Brooklyn. Can they make that leap? I like your pick, Andy, but it's not just about that pick. We know this. It's about July 1 and who they can get in free agency. So that's when it really gets fun in Brooklyn, Matt.
Going to be a fascinating summer for the Nets. Still coming up.
On circumstances. Here's the thing you need to know about the Warriors. They're not going to have any cap room to replace these guys. They have no cap room no matter what. So can they or should they max out KD and Clay? They say they're going to do it. They've declared that as their direction, and just let them both redshirt. Look, these guys are irreplaceable talents. It's obvious that everyone still wants them, even if they're hobbled like this for a full calendar year. Clay may be back sooner, but you're going to be cautious with him. So for the Warriors, you got to listen to this, Billy. Kevin Durant starts at 38. His last year would be a $50 million year. $33 million for Clay. He goes up to $43 in his fifth year. If they do both of those things with the super tax, a $340+ million payroll. Of all the things we've talked about, that's a big number, and it would be the same the following year or similar. So back to the draft. They do draft well, and they play their draft picks. So this seems relevant to me. Andy, who would you take that can plug in and play this year while these other guys recover?
Well, this deep in the draft, I'm going to go with Nicholas Claxton from Georgia, who potentially could replace Kevon Looney if Looney is not back with the Warriors. 6'11", long, athletic, can play multiple positions. And here's a great stat that his head coach, Tom Crean, put out on Twitter, which is that he went from 2 to 6 on average free throw attempts a game this past season, which shows he was drawing more contact and getting to the rim, which he needs to obviously do at the next level.
Well, and that's key at the NBA. You want to get fouled. You want to get to the free throw line. I love the fact Tom is putting those stuff out there, those facts out there. I love that. Love that. But I think, if you can get fouled at the next level, get you easy points.
All right, to the 29th pick, owned by the Spurs, conveyed to San Antonio by the Raptors in the deal that sent Kawhi Leonard to Toronto, which paid off nicely last week. How about the Spurs and their consolation prize here?
Their consolation prize is Chumu Okeke, a 6'8", 235-pound, small forward, power forward for the Spurs. He has a high basketball IQ. He fits the Spurs. He moves well, runs the floor well, does a lot of things with the basketball very well. He's the type of player that the Spurs look and find. He can step out and make the three. He's athletic enough, and he has great toughness. So I like him playing for the Spurs.
And this is a great team for him because he tore his ACL in the the win over North Carolina in the NCAA tournament. I was in that locker room. They were devastated, yet the Auburn still ended up, advancing past Kentucky to the Final Four. But for a team to take him with this injury, it should be a team that has multiple picks, that doesn't necessarily need him to play right away deeper into this draft. But he was their leading scorer, their top rebounder. He was their guy, despite them shooting all those threes. And then he goes down, and yet they're still able to advance. So if he can go to a team like the Spurs, it'd be perfect for him.
We have reached the final pick of our mock draft in the first round. The Milwaukee Bucks led the league in wins, so they draft 30th. Great regular season, good playoff run, dismantled a little bit by the Raptors in the conference finals. Where are they looking with number 30?
Well, you could go in a lot of different directions here. I'm going to go with Matisse Thybulle from Washington, who was the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. And Thybulle, I think, has got great length. I think Giannis would love playing with him. Malcolm Brogdon, who obviously loves defense, playing at Virginia. Now, a lot of this, in terms of being a great steal guy, 3.5 steals a game, was in a zone up for Mike Hopkins in Washington. But still, he's got the length, the reach, and you know what? He told me he loves to play defense. So if you're getting someone at the 30th pick who wants to play a certain position and has got that skill set, you don't have to worry about him. He knows what he wants to do.
Bucks have other issues, by the way, in terms of free agency. Chris Middleton and Malcolm Brogdon and Nikola Mirotic.
Brooke Lopez. They need a guy that can play defense because they do a lot of offensive scoring, a lot of shooting. They need a guy that can play defense. He fits the bill.
There you have it. Our mock draft is in the books. Write it all down. This is exactly the way it's going to happen for sure. There's no doubt. But watch the draft coverage anyway.
Yes.
We'll start at 5 Eastern time on Thursday and be with you all night long on Thursday. We'll see you then.